So to change means that we agree that something different must be done. And the idea of change is really quite revolutionary in its concept. It means that, we have to decide as we the people that, the path that we are on, or the road that we are on, is taking us to the wrong place. That's relatively easy to decide today. If you're not one of the privileged few, particularly with a university diploma, and you get everything regardless of what you do, no need to earn anything because you have a diploma. Well, for the rest of us, life isn't quite so simple as counterfeiting money. We actually have to earn it. And actually, we're not paid. Because we're paid by counterfeit money, and that means that we're not paid at all, which makes us slaves. So, we need to change. And the question is, how do we change as a world, as a people, as reality itself? And that begins in a courtroom, because as men have proven throughout history, a gun really doesn't change much. It changes some, it stops some for a while, but in the end it really doesn't change much. So that we need the law to be on our side as we the people, rather than on their side as, we can control you instead. So how do we change the law, and how do we change our form of governing so that we become, owners of ourselves? That's basically the answer of what democracy is: owners of ourselves. And the first part of that is to create law ourselves. Not by hiring someone or voting for someone to vote for me and to make a law that, I don't get a vote on even. But rather, as we the people ourselves, we need to create the law in simple forms so that we understand that, so that we can represent ourselves in a courtroom because we know what the law is, because it's simple and plain and easily understood and cannot be misinterpreted easily. And we can fight against that. So those laws, that kind of law, is completely missing. This is America, and it has no place whatsoever in American law. Because American law, just take a look at their libraries, and the volumes of books are like in the billions of pages long. I'm not sure just how long, but you get the idea. So they have not done, your representatives have not done anything for you with regard to democracy. They've only used the law to create for themselves little cavities and little crevices and little places to hide from the law. That's, of course, what they're paid for by the people who actually elect your officials. Counterfeiting means that they have the money to buy the election. And counterfeiting is done because, your leaders spent too much and they have no way out other than counterfeiting the money. Counterfeiting means that instead of reality determining what the economy or capitalism is, the people, a few people in government employment, have taken it upon themselves to create inflation by stating that there are assets that we don't have. In other words, in I think it was 2008 or 10 or something, the American government official claimed that the United States of America, the people in America, owned assets in the neighborhood of $200 trillion. Assets in America in totaling $200 trillion is equal to about $28,000 per human face on the planet, divided equally. That does not exist in reality. Neither does $153 trillion, back, 4 or 5 years ago, of debt. That does not exist in reality. It can't be paid. And if you create, a claim of assets that you don't own, that's inflation. And since they don't admit to inflation, and the media mice that supposedly protect you don't know anything or can't say anything because they are protecting their jobs, because the media has been sold to just a tiny few who will completely evict them from journalism if they don't do exactly what they're told. And you can believe that they are told exactly what they can and cannot do, because otherwise you lose your job and are blacklisted. They don't have freedom to move or freedom to express, even if they say they do, because the editor will refuse them. Anyway, the reality of it is, what can we do to change our world for ourselves? And the first part of that is, as said, we must change the law by creating the law ourselves, by voting on the law that we will have to live with for ourselves, per individual person. And there should be a means to vote. Let the children vote too. They have to live it. So if we have the law that we can actually use, and that will be done, once it is done, it is done. It's like the 10 Commandments or something, which have lasted for thousands of years, unchanged. It's like the constitutional amendments, which are short and simple, relatively so, that haven't changed for 200 years. Once you get the law corrected, once you get the law created for the people, rather than for the individuals who took over government and rebelled against us as traitors, once you get the law corrected, then it will last for a long, long time and doesn't need to be done again. But even so, we can vote on, changes every 10 or 15 years or whatever it is you want. So how do we implement that? How do we change and take away the power of individuals over us? And the first part of that is the Constitution itself. We're talking Americans here primarily. And the Constitution is the very foundation of government. In fact, the Constitution for the United States of America is the government of the United States of America. The government is our agreement as a people, as a democracy, as we the people have decided this is what our nation shall be. This is the direction that we the people have chosen for ourselves, and this is what our employees, who are hired to produce the government which we need to make this happen, have sworn to uphold. Those who do not swear, do not hold high positions. And if they swore, then there are penalties for failure to uphold the office which they said they would do. And that is to uphold the Constitution first above anything else. And there is no anything else. You can't decide that this is more important than what constitutional law is. That is not the oath of office you took. Your oath of office you took is as written, not as interpreted by 9 people in the Supreme Court or any other form, but as we the people decide. This is how it is or should be. And that has been written down as a constitution, and that forms the government. There are no employees of government who can call themselves the government. They are not the government. They are the employees of we the people. And their job is to uphold the Constitution. That is the rules that they have to live by in their work. Now, failure to uphold that oath of office is a crime, and it constructs treason. And when you allow experimentation from the university to threaten an entire world by any means, and threaten our nation by any means, as is, creating nuclear fire or genetically mutilating life on Earth, or, building weapons of mass destruction or any of the rest of that, then that is terrorism as well. The open rebellion against the United States Constitution is absolutely clear in court cases that I have presented, as James Frank Osterbur in throughout the trials and all manner of informal cases in this United States, in this state of Illinois. They, the Constitution is simply cast aside. It's not allowed in the courtroom. And that is an open, actual rebellion. And it is anarchy against the United States of America and the state of Illinois. Because they are not allowed to do that. I have 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases, well actually 3, but 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases. That was 08-1339 and 11-100. Both of them were redress of grievance cases. That's the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, guaranteed right. As we, the people, both were discarded after being docketed, which means I met all the criteria. Both were discarded by the Secretary of the Court, which is an illegal act because once docketed, only a judge can discard a case or deny it or make a judgment against it. So the cases still exist, and redress of grievances is still the law of our land in this United States. Redress of grievances means that we have the right to assemble as, citizens in need of demanding that we will know what our employees have been doing. We want an accounting. We want control over the United States of America by law, and that law is redress of grievances, in which we take our employees to court and examine them to determine whether or not they have in fact carried out their oath of office, the reason they got their job in government for our benefit, to determine whether they did or did not do what they swore they would do. Now, redress of grievances gives us the right to determine if we, the people, believe our employees did carry out their oath of office, did do what we hired them to do. And if they did not do that, redress of grievances gives us the right to condemn them, to judge them accordingly, to remove them from office, and to take control over the government as it is by law through the Constitution, to determine what our future shall be instead, because our employees have failed us and in fact rebelled against us. That is a matter of treason, and because, if we hired them to do a particular job, we gave them a full-out reality of rules and regulations for which they had to obey, which is the Constitution itself and its amendments. We gave them associated literature, which is the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, to give them a full accounting and a full description of what is and is not allowable in this United States. And our decision to hire them was based upon their swearing they would in fact obey the laws that we have created in our American Constitution and documents that formed this nation itself. So that is the second part of how we get control and how we change what we need to change in order to rule ourselves as a democracy. The next part of that is we cannot change or rule ourselves without controlling the money. And we have to have limited capitalism to control the money. Limited capitalism means that we get to determine by vote, our individual vote, not someone voting for me, our individual vote, we get to determine ourselves what the maximum income anyone may have in this nation shall be, and the minimum for a 40-hour work, and you describe it. Therein, we need to also determine what the maximum amount of property in any particular place is that you can own or control, or the maximum amount of resources that you have permission to use is. As a nation, we can determine the main portions of what is or is not an individual right. That is our right as we, the people. That is our democracy and its purpose, to create a government that we own, So we have an ultimate right to do so. And we can use eminent domain to confiscate all the counterfeit money and determine what is or is not an accurate or realistic debt to be paid for ourselves. And we do that by using redress of grievances to create, a courtroom that is our own. We are the judge, and they will bring those we demand, the employees of our government, our nation, to court so that we can ask them the questions that we need to understand. We cannot be wrong about such things as igniting a nuclear fire, which means burning atoms, as is done on the sun. There is no going back from that. When it's done, the planet burns, just like the sun. Same fire, same result. That is our reality. We face a tremendous amount of threat, all of it, or 90% of the threat that we face is directly from the universities and their education. The education which has taken away, all the things that we needed for our survival. They don't teach the children anything as far as survival goes. They don't teach them anything about life. They don't teach them anything about law. They don't teach them anything about governing. They give them a handful of crap, and then when they get to college they do it all over again, because the first 12 years are just to control them, to keep them contained in little pens so that they don't learn anything, and the second part is to make them slaves by putting them in college, so that you have to pay for that little bit of knowledge, so that you have to pay to join their union, because it is a union. The union is, of course, how to control the work for ourselves. That's what unions are about, how to control the work for ourselves and get us more. Not them, us more. And every union does it in the same way. They control some tiny little portion of information that is important, that the rest don't know exactly, so that they can then control the work. So, that is the education that you get. Basically, your children get nothing until they get to college, and then they have to pay for it. So all your payments throughout the 12 years that they went to school are basically for nothing other than a little reading and writing. And some of them don't get that. It is fraud. Just like the medical industry is open, organized crime against us, using extortion to steal our money. At $10,000 per citizen is what the medical industry is charging, $10,000 per citizen, and that's what they collect per year currently. And that doesn't include medicine or the military. And it may not include insurance. I don't really know. It's not divided into who gets what. But it is clearly organized crime, because there is no way that in this world, that in this nation, that every single citizen is getting $10,000 worth of medical care. That's just a lie. And it's not really actually the doctors and the nurses that cause that trouble, as much as it is the people who are in charge of the industry itself. It is a monopoly against us. And we need to change that by changing the fact of what they can charge us. Who else gets to charge anything they damn want? Who else gets to charge and steal and bankrupt people based on the idea that they can charge anything they want, and claim that they have to charge that because, otherwise they don't get paid? Well, they get $10,000 a year paid, and that doesn't include all the things that they write off. You get the picture. You're being taken to the cleaners by organized crime, because you don't want to gamble with the idea that, well, maybe they won't help me if I need something. Well, you have to, find a little courage somewhere. Otherwise, you're just going to be dead. But anyway, that's nearly not important at all, because the threats that we face are tremendous, and we have to change them or we die. And nothing is more important about changing that than controlling the university, which threatens our lives. They have made, I have no idea how many countless biological weapons against us at this point. That's what genetic mutilation is and does and is for. They're intending to kill us, whether you believe it or not, and they lie and they lie and they lie about what they do. But what they do is actually try to create chaos in genetics. And that's what they want to do, because they're trying to figure out how to control genetics entirely, and they figure, like everything else they've ever done, they figure to destroy it and destroy it and destroy it 10 billion times, so that they then learn how to put it back together so that it doesn't blow up or fall down or whatever. Genetics are not like that. They're not a simple thing, and that is absolutely certain. So they're trying to kill us instead, by pretending they can be gods. They can't. And we need to change that, or we will have no life, we will have no body of life, we will have nothing that we value, and the world itself has to be changed, because, we are using the resources beyond what can be allowed. We are burning fossil fuels and creating heat on this planet that is warming it to the point where it's going to change and we can't live here anymore, and that burning of fossil fuels is consuming oxygen off of the planet that is more than what the planet can release. So we're going to run out of oxygen as well, and you'll get to die of asphyxiation soon. That's not a guess, that's not a game, that's a reality of our existence, because of all the engines that you have, every motor time, every time you go to the store, every time you go to the restaurant, or wherever it is you go, you burn oxygen for your fire. And that fire consumes that oxygen so that we don't get to have it to breathe. And every time, every fire needs oxygen. You know that. And, where does the oxygen come from? Well, it's proven that we consume far more oxygen than what the planet releases. Doesn't take a genius to know how that ends. And the TV tells you, the university is a genius. Well, it's all fantasy and failure rather than genius. Just take a look at the reality instead of the constant fantasies that you're being given. Anyway, we again return to the fact that we must change this earth, humanity on this earth, because we are the threat. And to change that, we need to also control the nations by world law. World law means that we create, as we the people of this world, the laws that our rulers, our leaders, must obey. In other words, we make the law for our leaders, and then we enforce that law on our leaders by using our military, because it is our military. It is not our leaders' military. There is no such thing as our leaders have a military unless we allow it. We are the military. Therefore, we can be the military that controls the leaders, and we can bring them to court, and we can judge them according to our law, and we can penalize them accordingly. Doesn't matter who they are. Every leader is the same. And that means that we will control them by law, and we will determine what will or will not be in terms of the earth as well. What you can use for burning fossil fuels or recycling or whatever it is. We can find the law in ourselves and make that what we demand of our world. That's our choice. It's a choice of we the people by vote. And there will be, all kinds of problems that occur because, the people who have power don't want to lose power. People who have money don't want to give any money back. People that, are so proud they can't even stand themselves are not going to let that go without a fight. But if you don't fight for yourself and you don't fight for your world, you're going to lose your world and you're going to go extinct. Because that's what the threats are. Extinction. literal extermination of the planet, literal burning the planet up as a sun, literal mutilation to horror and terrors that you can't even imagine, because that's what your geneticists are doing, and that's what your physicists are doing, and that's what, this world is going to. The world itself is dying because of what humanity does. And humanity has overpopulated itself to the point where we add 1 billion people per decade, which means there will soon be no food, no water, no nothing but war. That's just how it is. You can't, eat something that doesn't live, which means that, when you tear up the habitat for everything that you need to survive as food, you end up losing your food, and guess what? The only thing left is humanity to eat. And that's how it will be, because that's how it will be. That's the reality of it. All the fantasies of the university cannot save you. All the fools and the failures and the tragedies of what they do, and what your leaders who have a university education, that's the one unifying factor in all of the things that direct our actions as a planet, or rather as a humanity on this planet, is that every leader has a university education, a university diploma. And so they all go down the road to the very same thing. Fantasies and failure and fools and counterfeiting. And they get away with it because of counterfeiting. Debts don't matter. Unless, of course, you owe them. Debts they owe you, they don't matter. Is that fair? No. So how do we create justice? The answer to that is that justice is something that must be found in a courtroom. You cannot create justice with a gun or any other thing. Justice is a decision of humanity, of society, to make it certain that we have guaranteed rights and that there is fair play. That the courtroom presents to us a verdict that we agree as a society should or should not be done. And the only way we can ensure that, the only way we can get that back, is to view and control the courtroom itself. That means that every trial needs to be accessible by the public, so that the public can watch and the public can determine whether or not this was in fact according to constitutional law, or that this was fair and realistic for our society. So you have to judge the judge and give him a grade. If he fails to uphold a reasonable grade, he is thrown out immediately. There is no immunity for a judge beyond good behavior. That's what the Constitution says. With good behavior, he can stay or she can stay. Bad behavior, he cannot. That's treason. Bad behavior is, tyranny. Bad behavior makes certain that there is no change, because the powerful own the courtroom. So we need to own the courtroom for ourselves, and the only way we do that is to control the judge, and the only way we control the judge is to view his or her actions in the process of a trial. That's the purpose of a jury, to control the judge. It is not necessarily to find a judgment against someone else. That is irrelevant, because a jury doesn't know a lot about different things, for the most part. The primary cause and the primary purpose of a jury is to control the judge and to make sure that justice was done, that this was fair play for this part of this society that we live in. That is our decision. And a judge must accept those responsibilities through constitutional law. In other words, you can't just make up the law for yourself, but the Constitution has already determined what that law will be, and we need to create not more than 100 new short laws so that we can know every law that we have agreed to and enforce those laws by enforcing them on the judge in a courtroom that is lawful. There is, an endless amount of other things that have to be done. Really? An endless amount, a lot, at least. And the problem is that you want what you want rather than what you need. The media gives you fantasies to believe, and you want to believe them, so you do. That isn't truth, and that isn't reality, and only truth can keep you alive. You should understand that. You should accept that. And you should validate that with your decisions so that life on earth can continue. Because it is in no way going to continue as it is. Change is required. It is that simple. Change is required. There's a biblical prophecy. Who cares if you believe in the Bible or not? I don't care if you believe in the Bible or not. What matters is that thousands of years ago there was a prediction for the end of days, a countdown of days, and that was in Daniel 12, and it goes, the great abomination. Once it rises or begins, then there will be so many days and so many days and so many days. And you can look up some of my videos for that. Nonetheless, that begins with the great abomination is, and that is that humanity, the university, is gambling with all life on earth, all future life, everything, even the planet itself, even the solar system itself, by trying to create the same fire here on earth as is on the sun. That is the great abomination. Because being wrong means all of it dies. Everything. There's no going back. There's no second chances. Once ignition occurs, that's the end. If it doesn't put itself out, as the university predicts, well, nuclear fires aren't going to put themselves out. And, there are arguments that prove that. So anyway, at the first machine that could in fact create nuclear fire, that's the great abomination, and that's where the great abomination begins. It began on April 1st, April Fool's Day 2012. And by the prediction of the Bible, that goes to the end of days, or hell begins, rather, on July 9th, 2019. And then hell continues for 666 days, according to that prediction. For, I think it's till March sometime in 2021. That would be the end of days, or Judgment Day at that point, and then half a day for whatever happens beyond Judgment Day. So in other words, even if you don't believe in all of the evidence of threats, and there is tremendous amounts of evidence that we are about to be exterminated as a planet by ourselves, our own decisions, the decisions of the universities that led us here. If you don't want to believe that, maybe you should try to believe the Bible. It's a prediction thousands of years ago. Clearly a great abomination is gambling with even the solar system itself. Going to change it once ignition occurs. Seriously. That is the great abomination. So, there's the countdown of days. So, maybe you would like to believe that the Bible is correct, or you got another one, who cares? The reality is we face our own extinction by our own ways. Humanity is growing by 1 billion more people to feed every decade. We can't sustain that, and everybody knows we can't sustain that. That means you have to make real choices, not fantasy choices. That means you have to accept the truth and make a decision to change or die, because you wouldn't do what life needed you to do. Simple as that. Your choice. Life or death for our world.